One night, while all the ants in the colony were asleep, Zoc set out to find the final ingredient he needed to complete his potion. After several days of searching, the wizard finally found the fire crystals and asked Spindle to light up the area while he extracted them from a rock. The ants sleeping below were annoyed by the stones falling on them and ordered Zoc to go get some rest. However, he ignored them and kept working to complete his mission. Minutes later, he managed to break open the rock and collect the crystals. The next morning, the worker ants return to their duties, but their routine is interrupted by the arrival of the destroyer. The colony is located in the backyard of the Nickel family's house, where Lucas lives with his parents, Doreen and Fred, and his sister Tiffany. Lucas has no friends and is constantly bullied by other boys in the neighborhood, especially Steve. Being bigger and stronger than everyone else, Steve takes advantage of his size to intimidate them. To avoid getting into trouble with him, Nikki and the other kids usually go along with whatever he says, although that still does not spare them from his abuse. After pulling a humiliating prank on Lucas, Steve and his gang leave. Filled with anger, the boy grabs his water gun and attacks the anthill to vent his frustration. It is not the first time he has done this. Whenever something like this happens, he takes out his anger on the ants. Because of these constant attacks, the entire colony knows him as the Destroyer. Zoc tries to confront him and threatens to use his magic, but Lucas kicks the anthill and sends him flying. Hova attempts to communicate with him because she believes it might stop the attacks, but she gets nowhere, and Zoc has to step in to prevent her from being crushed. Just as Lucas is about to finish them both off, his mother calls him inside the house. Once inside, Doreen explains that she and Fred are leaving on a trip to celebrate their wedding anniversary. As she says goodbye, she notices that Lucas seems upset and asks what is wrong. Still angry, the boy snaps at her and tells her to just leave already. Shortly afterward, Doreen and Fred leave for their trip, leaving Lucas and Tiffany in the care of Grandma Mamo. Later, the old woman drops her dentures into the yard. Lucas climbs up to return them and discovers that her room looks like a fortress. When he asks why, Mamo tells him that she is preparing for an alien invasion. Meanwhile, Zoc continues working on his potion. However, something is preventing the magic from working properly. Even though he uses the fire crystals, the mixture does not change color. Hova tries to encourage him, but at that moment the council chief arrives and interrupts their conversation. The leader reminds him that, because of the Destroyer's constant attacks, the colony's food reserves are far below normal levels and asks if he has a solution. Zoc assures him that he will soon finish a potion capable of saving the colony. The next morning, while Lucas is watering the lawn, Steve suddenly appears and throws a firecracker near him before walking away. He then tosses another one, but it goes out before it can explode. Furious, Lucas turns his attention back to the anthill and begins planning another attack. At the same time, Zoc discovers that the fire crystals are not working because they have tiny cracks in them. To solve the problem, he covers the imperfections and tries again. This time, the mixture works, and the potion is finally completed. But the celebration is short-lived. Suddenly, a powerful stream of water floods the anthill, sweeping everything away in its path. The colony begins to fall apart as Lucas launches another attack. Before he can continue, however, a strange man approaches him and introduces himself as Stan, a pest exterminator. He claims that Fred had hired his services but forgot to sign the contract before leaving on his trip. Taking advantage of the situation, Stan manages to convince Lucas to sign the document in his father's place. After the flood, Zoc and Hova manage to escape the water and discover that Spindle was able to save the potion. Shortly afterward, they rescue the council chief, who had been trapped beneath some rocks, and look with concern at the condition of the colony. The ants are desperate because they do not understand why the Destroyer keeps attacking them when they have never done anything to him. At that moment, Zoc announces that he has finally completed the potion. That very night, he and a small group of ants put a plan into action. After crossing the house, they make their way to Lucas's bedroom. While he sleeps, Zoc pours a few drops of the potion into his ear, and the spell begins to take effect. When Lucas wakes up in the middle of a storm, he notices that everything around him is gigantic. Frightened, he realizes that he is the one who has shrunk. After falling off his bed, he ends up inside a bag of potato chips. When he finally gets out, he finds Zoc waiting for him. At the same time, a loud clap of thunder wakes Grandma Mamo. Worried, she enters Lucas's room to check on him. From there, using her binoculars, she manages to see her grandson being carried away by ants. The shock is so overwhelming that she faints. Once outside the house, the ants take Lucas to the colony and bring him to the place where his trial will be held. All the ants have already gathered for the event and are amazed to see a human up close. The guards drag Lucas before the council while Fugax reads the charges against him. Soon afterward, the queen arrives to decide his fate. After hearing the case, she chooses not to eliminate him. She explains that getting rid of one human would only protect the colony for a short time, since others could appear in the future. Instead, the queen orders Lucas to live among the ants until he learns what it means to be one of them. According to her, that is the best way to build a better future for the entire colony. Hova volunteers to guide the boy, and the next day his training begins. However, Lucas tries to hide and plans to escape while building a suit out of various materials he finds around the colony. Eventually, Hova convinces him that running away will solve nothing. She explains that he will only regain his normal size once he learns how to be an ant. After that, she offers to help him find his place within the colony. To help him adjust, Hova takes Lucas to Krila, one of her friends. She assigns him to the blue team alongside several male ants from the colony. Their first challenge is to work together to overcome a series of obstacles, retrieve a giant piece of candy known as the Sweet Rock, and return to the anthill. The first team to make it back will win the competition, but no one is allowed to be left behind. When the race begins, the first challenge is crossing a crack in the ground. The ants on the blue team cooperate and form a bridge with their bodies. Lucas thinks he can do it on his own, but he ends up falling into the crack and needs the others to rescue him. Farther ahead, they must cross a puddle. However, Lucas accidentally gets separated from the group and ends up being launched directly at the Sweet Rock. Seeing how quickly he reached it, the other ants decide to use the same strategy to get to the objective faster. Now all they have to do is return to the colony before the red team. To accomplish that, they must climb a large rock, but Lucas cannot climb the way the ants can. His teammates try to help him, but the delay allows the red team to cross the finish line first and win the competition. After the challenge, Hova congratulates Lucas on his effort. However, he admits that he has never been very good at working as part of a team. As they continue talking, Hova senses that something is approaching and quickly moves Lucas to safety. Moments later, several wasps appear above the colony and begin attacking. The ants immediately organize themselves and fight back by launching stones at the invaders. During the battle, one of the wasps dives straight toward Krila, but Zoc arrives just in time to save her. He uses his magic to strike the insect with a bolt of energy and then rushes to help Hova, who is being attacked while trying to protect Lucas. Zoc asks Lucas to help fight the wasps, but the boy panics and runs away. The wizard tries to intervene, but one of the wasps grabs Hova and carries her off into the sky. Meanwhile, another wasp chases Lucas. Desperate, the boy remembers the firecracker that had been left on the lawn and comes up with a plan. Using a piece of glass, he focuses the sun's rays onto the fuse until it finally ignites. Just as the wasp dives toward him, its stinger becomes lodged in the firecracker. Lucas quickly jumps aside, and seconds later the explosion blasts the insect. At that moment, Zoc arrives and is also caught in the explosion. Frightened by what happened, the wasp carrying Hova decides to drop her and retreat along with the rest of the swarm. Seeing the enemies leave, the ants celebrate and thank Lucas for saving the colony. However, Zoc is not nearly as pleased. He knows that Lucas did not act to help anyone else, he only acted to save himself. That night, the entire colony celebrates the victory with a huge feast. Fugax brings nectar for dinner, and after seeing the other ants enjoying it, Lucas decides to give it a try. He loves the taste and ends up eating all of it. A little later, Fugax returns with more food and reveals that it is actually caterpillar droppings. As soon as Lucas finds out, he instantly feels sick to his stomach. To help him, Hova gives him a piece of root mixed with a drop of water. After drinking the remedy, the boy feels much better and lets out a massive burp that echoes throughout the entire colony. When dinner is over, Hova, Fugax, and Krila take Lucas to meet the Queen Mother, the ant who gave rise to all the queens of the different colonies. Along the way, Lucas notices several drawings carved into the walls that tell the story of their people. Among the images is the legend of the Queen Mother. According to the story, she will one day return, and fresh nectar will fall from the sky like rain. They also come across an ancient drawing of the cloud breather. No one in the colony knows exactly what it means, but everyone believes that death follows wherever it goes. The moment Lucas sees the image, he suddenly remembers the contract he signed for Stan, the exterminator. Alarmed, he immediately runs toward his house to try to cancel the agreement. Krila attempts to stop him, but the boy promises that if they help him, they will be able to get all the candy they want. When they enter the house, they find a huge shaggy carpet blocking their path. To cross it, Lucas suggests using rose petals as parachutes. After climbing onto a piece of furniture, each of them grabs a petal and waits for the signal to jump. When they finally leap, a gust of air from a fan carries them across the room, allowing them to reach the other side. However, Fugax is left behind and falls into the spinning fan blades. Fortunately, he escapes unharmed and catches up with the rest of the group. Later, they arrive in the kitchen. There, they find several gummy candies, and while Fugax and Krila focus on collecting them, Lucas runs toward the telephone. The boy dials Stan's number to cancel the contract, but he gets the last digit wrong. On the other end, an employee from Pizza Kingdom answers the call. Lucas believes he is speaking to Stan and tells him that he wants to cancel the agreement. When he hangs up, he thinks the problem has been solved. A short time later, the phone rings again, and Tiffany comes to answer it. After finishing the call, she spots Fugax carrying a gummy candy and tries to crush him. However, Grandma Mamo appears just in time to stop her. The old woman knows that Lucas has been shrunk down to the size of an ant and fears that her grandson could get hurt. Late that night, Lucas and his friends return to the anthill. Zoc is relieved to see that Hova is safe and sound, since she had disappeared without any explanation. But when he discovers that they had been inside the human's house, he becomes furious. That place is strictly forbidden because it is far too dangerous. Convinced that Lucas will only bring more trouble, Zoc threatens him. He tells the boy that he will never give him the potion that can restore his normal size because he considers him a danger to the colony. Frightened and disappointed, Lucas decides to leave. As Zoc returns to the anthill, Hova asks where Lucas is. When the wizard tells her that he has gone away, she is angry at first, but soon becomes worried about him. Hova then sets out to find him. Fugax and Krila decide to come along, knowing that the boy is unlikely to survive the night on his own. Meanwhile, Lucas sits beside a lake feeling sorry for himself, convinced that he will never be able to return home. At that moment, he spots a beetle, but the insect suddenly disappears. While washing his face, he tries to find it and discovers that a giant frog is hiding in the water. The animal attempts to eat him and shoots out its tongue to drag him into its mouth. Lucas runs for his life, and just then Hova, Fugax, and Krila arrive. Together, they are forced to flee from the frog. The ants manage to reach safety by climbing onto a soda can, but Lucas is unable to climb it. He barely makes it a few inches before slipping and being swallowed whole. Zoc arrives just in time to witness the scene. Seeing Hova cry over the boy's apparent death, he begins to feel guilty and decides to take action. Inside the frog's stomach, Lucas encounters the same beetle he saw earlier, along with a firefly and a mosquito. When they discover the remains of other insects trapped in the slimy substance around them, they all panic and desperately search for a way to escape. Meanwhile, Zoc provokes the frog into swallowing him as well. He carries a root with him and plans to use it to rescue Lucas. Once inside the animal, he places the root into the stomach acid, triggering a powerful reaction. Seconds later, the frog lets out a massive burp and spits out Lucas along with the other insects. The grumpy mosquito celebrates his freedom, but his joy is short-lived when another frog suddenly appears and eats him immediately. Shortly afterward, Zoc and Lucas reunite with the rest of the group. Hova forgives Zoc, and since they are far from the colony, they decide to spend the night camping. The next morning, Fugax is the first to wake up. Suddenly, he sees a gigantic figure approaching the colony and begins shouting with excitement. His friends immediately get up, and after taking a closer look, Lucas realizes that the supposed Queen Mother is actually Stan, the exterminator. At that moment, he understands that his attempt to cancel the contract did not work. As for Zoc, he recognizes the man in the cap as the legendary Cloud Breather. Meanwhile, back at the colony, everyone celebrates the supposed arrival of the Queen Mother. However, Zoc arrives and reveals the truth. Lucas explains that the man is bringing poisons and sprays to exterminate them. When the ants ask how he knows this, he confesses that he was the one who signed the contract. Upon hearing this, the council chief orders the guards to get rid of Lucas. However, the boy proposes a solution. He suggests that Zoc use the same potion that shrank him to also shrink the exterminator. To carry out the plan, the group visits the wasp's nest and asks for their help. Since they are also in danger, the wasps agree to cooperate. Riding on the backs of the wasps, the ants fly to Stan's head and attempt to pour the potion into his ear. However, they discover that the man is wearing headphones, protecting him from any attempt to get close. Because of this, Stan is able to swat the insects away while continuing to prepare his equipment. When he finally removes the headphones, Lucas tries to approach him. However, the wasp he is riding loses control and ends up landing on the exterminator's head. There, the boy discovers an enormous amount of dandruff inhabited by dozens of lice. Stan scratches his head, and Lucas takes the opportunity to jump onto his face. During his escape, he falls into one of the man's nostrils, but he is blasted back out when Stan blows his nose. Fortunately, Hova is nearby and manages to rescue him. Everything seems to be over, but moments later they are attacked again and crash to the ground. The wasp lands on top of Hova, pinning her down completely. As the cloud of insecticide draws closer, Lucas considers running away. However, he remembers everything he has learned about teamwork and decides not to abandon his friends. Gathering all his strength, he lifts the wasp off Hova and frees her. The three of them then escape together. A little later, they reach a mailbox. Hova manages to climb it, and Lucas follows close behind. For a moment, it looks as though the toxic cloud has caught up with him, but to everyone's surprise, he manages to climb the wooden post and save himself. Once reunited with Zoc, they come up with a new plan. Since getting close to Stan's ear is impossible, they decide to coat a wasp stinger with the potion so it can inject it directly into the exterminator. Seconds later, the potion begins to take effect, and Stan starts to shrink. However, he does not shrink down to the size of an ant. Instead, he becomes the size of a child. Now that the exterminator is defenseless, the surviving wasps join forces and attack him. Since he is now too small to climb into his truck, Stan steals a tricycle and flees the area. With the danger finally gone, the ants return to the colony and proclaim Lucas their savior. Shortly afterward, the queen appears and grants him his freedom before departing. The time has come to say goodbye. Lucas bids farewell to his friends, and Zoc finally gives him the potion that will restore him to his normal size. After saying goodbye to Hova, the boy leaves the colony. Once he drinks the liquid, Lucas begins to grow until he regains his original size. From the house, Grandma Mama watches through her binoculars and is overjoyed to see him return. Hours later, Lucas's parents come back from their trip, and the boy runs to hug his mother. As they carry their luggage into the house, Steve and his gang show up once again to bother him. But this time, Lucas refuses to be intimidated and decides to stand up to him. Steve becomes angry with Nikki and threatens to beat him up, so Lucas takes the opportunity to stand alongside the weaker kids and face him together. Encouraged by this, the other children also run after Steve. Realizing he is outnumbered, the bully reveals that he is actually a coward and runs away. Now free from his control, the other kids invite Lucas to play with them. Before leaving, Lucas places several pieces of candy around the anthill as a gift for his friends. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know what you think about this movie.